I had this idea in my mind. I wanted to start a travel social network that was really just like a travel log. Like I have on my wall in the other room, I've got a map of all the places I've visited in the world, like a pin board. It's like a pin board, right? And so I've got a pin in every place, I or my wife, we've been, whatever. And I wanted to kind of just make a digital version of that so I could, land on Chris Koerner's thing, be like, hey, I wonder where he's been. Oh, he looks like he's been in New Zealand. I'm traveling there. Hey, Chris, what do I do? Right. And so I could have friends and, trust people a little bit different. So I had this idea and I contacted a dev shop in Ukraine that I had used before in my previous company. And I said, hey, what would it take to put this together? And they gave me a quote and said, it's going to be $105,000. And I was like, okay, cool. Right. And that's going to give me this iOS, Android, web. I was going to launch this cool app. And that was my idea. And I literally hung up with those guys after they showed me their proposal. And I jumped on LinkedIn and I saw this post of somebody said, it was like a VC or somebody. I don't even remember who it was, but somebody said, I just watched a founder build some software in like 10 minutes in front of me with this thing called Replit. And I was like, what's a Replit? I had no idea what that was. And I immediately jumped on and I was like, whoa, it says I just have to describe this thing and I can build something. And so I tried something really quick and I was like, whoa, it just built a website. And I was like, I wonder. And so I took this $105,000 plan. they had delivered it to me in like a proposal format. I was like, build this. I just dragged it into Replit and said, build this. And like 20 minutes later, it was built. And I was like, okay, wow, what is going on here? And so I started working on that and I kind of got addicted to playing with that and figuring it out. And then, I just being out here, I think in West Mountain where there's a bunch of, I would say less techie people out here, they're making $20-30 million a year in their businesses, but they're like construction companies, cattle, herders, all kinds of crazy stuff. Lots of blue collar. And they knew nothing about AI. I would talk to them, whether I was at church or out to dinner or just in the neighborhood talking to someone, and they just knew nothing. I was like, man, they are going to miss out and I need to do something about it. So that's really what led me to start this one. Is I wanted to help people see this amazing technology and what it was doing for me and see if I could help them be able to improve their own business.
Yeah. So you have this idea for this travel social media business. You get a $105,000 quote, which I will say, if you go to a dev shop in the Ukraine, like that's going to be the cheaper quote. Yeah. That's probably why you went to them, right?
Totally.
So could have been a lot more expensive. You take the proposal, you drag it into Replit, which you'd never heard of. You learn about the magic of vibe coding. And then you think, man, forget that travel idea. Like the vibe coding is the idea. Like vibe coding plus business owners plus solving problems with AI for business owners. That is the idea. And that kind of led you down this rabbit hole. Is that accurate?
Yeah. When I discovered this Replit thing, I had the money to be able to go and, pay this dev shop, but all of a sudden I needed zero money. I was able to, well, not zero, but I needed like $30 to be able to see if my idea could come to life. And that change was so different, 100,000 to $30 or whatever, right? When I launched Gen AI API, my current business, it took me about 3 days. Like I said, it took me maybe about 35 hours of vibe coding. It's a pretty intense 3 days, 10 to 12 hours a day. And the total cost was about $400. That includes buying the domain, setting up my email system, credits, setting up Stripe, using credits, all those different things, right? But all in about $400. And because I had previously raised a bunch of capital for this other business, I knew kind of what it would take to get a business to the point that it took me 3 days to get it to, right? You would have had to pay tons of developers for a long time writing all that code. You'd have to pay a CEO. You'd have a marketing person. You'd have a salesperson trying to figure out who's going to buy this. And it would have taken, I did all the kind of calculations. It would have taken about 18 months to build that thing. And the salaries and everything that I would have done the way I did it last time would have cost me about $3.2 million. And so this time I did it in 3 days and it cost me $400. And that just lit me up, man. I was so excited.
It broke your frame. Totally. It's like a frame breaking moment.
100%.
So that story reminded me of an email I sent just yesterday. And I want to read just a snippet of that real quickly, if you don't mind. All right. So the backstory behind this is this gentleman was emailing me about an app that he vibe coded, and he quickly got it to $22,000 in monthly recurring revenue, which was mostly profit. So then he sends me this excited email. And I've sent these emails before over the last 20 years. I've received these, I've sent these, I've been on both ends of it. Yeah. And it was basically like, dude, I think we're onto something much bigger than this. I think if we go raise VC, if we do this, this can be, and I don't want to reveal any details of his business, but this could be the de facto solution for this AI solution in the United States. And so I hate like pouring water on people's fire because I'm an optimist. Like people have poured water on my fire and it makes me mad. It fires me up. So this is like a snippet of what I said. I said, love the idea, but ask yourself this. What is the percentage probability that your current biz nets you 5 figures per month for this foreseeable future? I'd say 95% because you're already there. 6 figures per month, maybe a 30% chance after some more growth and time. Now, what would the statistical chance be of this new idea making you life-changing money? Once you consider raising funds, hiring, growing, competing with others, etc., I would say 1 to 6%. Considering all that, knowing everything I've learned about starting all these businesses, most self-funded, some venture, I would take the quote-unquote sure thing bet every time. More cash flow, less headache or friction, more certainty of amazing money. Even if the newest idea pans out, sometimes with big exits don't come with big money to the founders because of liquidity preferences and down rounds. And for those listening or watching, liquidity preference is when the investor gets all their money back first. So if you raise 13 million and you sell the business for 12 million, you get nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The investors get all of it, right? And then I said, sorry to throw water on your fire. I just think you have an amazing thing right now in its current state, and it could net you 7 figures per year without a ton of extra work or iteration. Would love to discuss working something out, yada, yada, yada. So that what you just said just reminded me of that email. I completely agree with you. It's just most venture funded things don't work out.
They don't. They really don't. And ours did. And it wasn't like a crazy grand slam, 100 million in my pocket. It was good and people made a return and that's fine. But the big thing here is that I don't, at this point, have anybody to answer to. I can do whatever I want. I am literally getting on a plane in 4 hours to go to Paris with my daughter for 5 days. And it's okay because I'm the boss. I'm the CEO. I'm self-funded, right? And I was the CEO of the last one, but I still, anytime I did anything, some investor would be like, dude, like you should be working, right? Go. I haven't gotten my money back yet. Go keep working, right? And you just always have that. It's like you're in debt, right? I mean, and it's not actually debt, right? Venture funding is a little bit different, but at least me, I don't want to just take people's money and run off with it, right? I want to deliver a return. And so I feel that obligation. With the new world of AI, you just don't have to do that. Anybody. You can be a hairdresser at Supercuts making $12 an hour with, plus tips. And you can afford everything you need to build that travel social network idea that I had.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Incredible.
It levels the playing field. It opens it up to anyone.
Yeah. So I want to get into how you got that first $15,000 customer. But before we do, after a year of being in business, with no experience in this industry, what do your numbers look like today?
Our goal for this year is probably to hit, I would say, I think we're going to be close to about 8 million in recurring revenue by the end of the year because of how we're growing. At this point right now, we're more like 2.5 of annual recurring revenue. So
after 1 year of being in business,
after 1 year.
And you started this business with $400, give or take?
$400. Cash flow positive literally from day 5, right? I mean, I had to invest those few $100s. And then by that Tuesday, had my first contract. And it's a good feeling, man. It's such a great feeling. And what's crazy? I've actually almost made as much money in this business in 1 year than I did in 7 or 8 years raising 13 million bucks.
Yeah. With all that headache and stress and accountability and oversight.
Yeah. And the business today, it's not a SaaS business quite in the same way. There's some SaaS. And so it's a little bit, but I wouldn't give it like a 10 or 15 or 20x multiple. I'd give it maybe a 6 or 7 or so. And so I already have a $15 million business sitting on my hands here. Right. And, if someone were to come and acquire this, I would already have personally a bigger exit than I had back then.
Yeah.
Right.
Life-changing money. So 2.5 million the first year. What is your profit on that?
So I did. This is kind of fun. I'm glad you asked this. So I really call March 1 of last year my start of the business. When I first started, the idea was to build something that was completely automated. Right? It was going to be kind of structured like an IQ test. That was actually my idea. Was an AI IQ test. How AI ready are you? And then if you score bad, I'm gonna sell you courses to do this, but they're all automated courses. You just get on and you take them and you learn it yourself and retake the test, whatever. If you did well on this kind of free test, this IQ test, I would then push you towards an official longer certification test that you could then use and say, hey, I have a certification from the General AI Proficiency Institute. You can put it on your LinkedIn, on your resume, whatever. That's
and this is for business owners specifically, or for anyone that wants to take it? It was really
for anyone when I first started. When I like that first weekend, that was the idea was test. If they do bad, I sell them courses. If they do well, I sell them a certification. So technically I can sell anybody that lands on the site, right? Because people want to know like, hey, how smart am I? I do, right? When I see an IQ test, I'm like,
yeah, everyone does.
I want to try that, right? And so that was the idea. And then, there was a little bit of a pivot there, even in just the first few days when I ended up selling directly to a business instead of a bunch of individuals, which I was expecting to do. But anyway, long story short, I ended up, pivoting and working through all this. And I got to my first million by about 6 months in. It took me about 6 months, and I did it completely solo. No employees, only me and my little AI team.
Hey, believe it or not, this is actually just a small segment of the full episode. If you want to watch the full episode of this, check out the link in the description.